Hey everyone, and welcome back to the X-Ring. So, I know I've been missing in action as far as videos go. I haven't done any reviews, but I've been busy at work trying to get caught up from that trip out west. And I just got done with a video shoot with Tony Marfione. So for you guys that are big knife guys and want to know about knife sharpening, I actually just did a video with them, and I'm going to attach that to the back of this, so you can just keep watching this. What's really cool about it is the knife that we used for the sharpening video, he's actually doing in a giveaway. All you have to do is don't comment on my video, but go over to Microtech Knives, subscribe to that YouTube channel, and then comment on it, and you'll have a chance to win that knife that he sharpened in there. He actually hand signed it and everything, so pretty cool. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this on how to properly sharpen a knife with Tony Marfione. We'll talk to you soon. Appreciate all the help and support. Have a good one. Hello and welcome back to Microtech Knives. We have a really exciting episode for you today. I am joined by Tony Marfione, owner of Microtech Knives, world-renowned knife builder. And tell us some of the things we're going to do today, Tony. I think it's going to be a really cool episode.
What we're looking at is since about 1992, we've been sharpening our knives by hand. Even though there's a million different ways that you've probably seen, techniques. You know, the techniques that we're going to go over today is how I learned very back in the day, and that we've refined over the course of some time. So we've been doing it for a long time, and this is how we continue to train our associates to do it.
So you've never used an automated machine to sharpen any Microtech knife?
Unfortunately, if the technology ever gets to that point, we'd maybe take a look at it. But the human element involved in these knives, they've always been done by hand.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take you down to the sharpening room. Tony is actually going to walk you through the steps on what we're doing, how we do it, and why we're well known for the sharpest knives in the world. All right, so we're down in the sharpening room, and there are 3 sharpening stations here, not including the serrations and everything in the back. One of the things we're going to have to do for the video is to turn off the air scrubbing, basically the dust collection system. Otherwise, you guys won't be able to hear anything. We'll also have safety glasses on because this is there's a lot of metal in this environment.
Absolutely. Anytime our associates are in here, we're typically using the best of the PPE gear. And if you're doing this type of work, you know, if you're not used to doing it, but in any event, always wear your personal protection gear, eyes, ears, and some type of level of respiration. It's always extremely important, regardless if you're doing any kind of automated sharpening along these lines. Sitting on a bench with a stone or sitting there with a Lansky sharpener is a little bit different. Just don't cut yourself. But at the end of the day, just always remember to use your personal protection gear.
Okay, so we're going to take brand new knives off the assembly line that have not been sharpened in any way, shape, or form, and tell us a little bit about these machines and what we're going to be doing with them.
You know, what we have is we've used a series of machines, hardcore manufactured grinders, or Burkins are our go-tos. You know, we use a 10-inch serrated wheel on just about everything that we use, and we use a cardboard hone on the end. You know, so how I've learned over the past is I've always learned how to do the sharpening edge down. You know, at the very, very early stages of Microtech, there was, again, no YouTube, there was no source on the internet to be able to go get any of this information. So you had to talk to people, you had to ask questions. You know, when I very, very first started out, I had a very small Wilton grinder that I bought from Home Depot and then honed them on a stone in my living room,
okay,
to get the edges. But, you know, as the quantities became more apparent, I had to start figuring some things out. So one particular knife, manufacturer or knife maker at the time was Chris Reeve Knives.
Yes.
And Chris was just a wealth of information. He put it to you straight. You know, there was no candy coating anything. And at the end of the day, you know, it was just like, you know, this is how I do it. You know, if you could refine it, that's great. If you can't, well then, you know, good luck. You know, what we learned over the course of time is basically roughing these in on, let's say, it could be a 220 or a 120 grit ceramic belt, and then doing a semi-finish with a 600 grit, a 400 to 600 grit to finish the foundation, and then from there using a cardboard or a leather type wheel, which we would use a green compound. And you know, I've used all different types of compounds over the years. I've tried them all. But at the end of the day, we won't disclose the one I'm particularly using, but it's been the best, and it's been very, very consistent with our edges over the years. So this is where we're at. And
All right,
this is how
nice.
we continue to train.
So this isn't something that you're going to find in most of your kitchens or anything else, but we're showing you how Microtech does it. Each and every knife that comes off of the assembly line comes through this process. Every knife also gets wrapped, so there's extra care and detail taken into making sure that the chassis don't get any type of metal or anything like that.
Absolutely. I mean, our thing is that, you know, at the end of the day, we've been wrapping these knives the same way. I wish there was a better way of doing it.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out one of these days, but we don't want to get any level of contaminants inside the knives.
Yeah.
You know, when you get typical dust or even a little bit of dirt or stuff like that, that's natural contaminants. But when you're talking about ceramic and metal dust,
Yeah.
or compounds that actually have, you know, aluminum oxide or ceramic oxides or something along those lines inside the knives, they don't react nearly as well. So
Gotcha.
we take some level of precautions to protect the chassis and the parts and pieces.
So this is the last thing the knife sees before it goes into QC and packaging. This is the last process.
At this point, I consider it the birth of the knife because, you know, at the end of the day, what is the essence of a blade is going to be the edge. You know, anywhere you go, whether it's at a knife show or somebody comes in, the first thing I always do is I pick up a knife and I touch the edge,
Yeah.
and to test its sharpness. So at this point, this is when it becomes alive. This
Okay.
is when it's born.
All right, so I think we're going to use two different models today. We're going to use the new
Hera, which
Okay.
is a really exciting new OTF. We're just really excited about this particular piece. It has a little bit of a different dynamic on the mechanism in the inside. Fires glassy smooth, and machine clip, machine chassis, hard coat anodize, M390 blades. It's as good as it gets for an everyday carry.
So what we're going to do today, guys, is we're going to actually sharpen two different blade styles. We're going to do a Tanto, which can be very, very difficult for someone that doesn't know what they're doing with regards to knife
Good
sharpening
stuff.
because of the transition, and sometimes they'll roll that. So Tony's going to show you how we do that, and he's also going to do the Hera, which is a double edge, which now you're having to sharpen 4 different edges. So let's go ahead and get into it and see how this is done.
All right, everyone, I'm going to start out with the Ultratech Tanno, as we call it. You know, the biggest thing that we run into when we sharpen our knives is all the knives have a geometry. So everybody knows when you're on a wheel or on a stone or anything else that you're abrading away material as you sharpen. So the biggest thing that we try to understand is how much to take off for each, you know, each belt or each level. You know, this, of course, being the rough final finish and finish, you can't make any foundation, not a whole lot of foundation changes on the honing wheel itself, but you can adjust your bevel or grind slightly from this point. You know, the biggest thing is too, is the reason why we rough and finish is to mitigate any kind of heat transfer to the blade. You know, we use serrated wheels, which are a little bit cooler to use, but again, you know, it's just a matter of touch and feel, and it takes some time to learn how to do this technique. It's not rocket science, we've just been doing it a long time, and the associates that we have now here at Microtech have been doing it for years, and we all often compare ideas, even still to date. Even though we've been doing it for over 27 years, I'm always looking to my team to come up with better techniques or better ways to doing this. So I'm going to start out on the 120 grit. So at this point, like I say, 120, I'm barely touching this blade. It's, I mean, it's such a finite, light touch, it's almost hard to describe. You know, our blades are, you know, typically on the Microtechs are flat bevel grinds to begin with anyway, which we land right around, you know, 8 to 10 thousandths thick. You know, so they're easy to put a foundation work on, but they're also easy to mess up if you're not careful. But so the 120 will just about leave a burr. In some areas it might be slightly faint, but the foundation work at that point is finished. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump onto the 600 grit and we'll finalize the grind. All right, so the what I consider to be the edge bevel is refined at this point. You have a complete what we call a wire burr. When you look at underneath the light, you should see like a hairline burr running across every edge. If the burr is not there and it's not touching at that point, you have to go back because you're not going to be able to hone an edge at that point. You know, the burr could be knocked off a bunch of different ways. I mean, people have used strops, they've used compound strops. Back in the early days, Chris taught me to take the burr off with a stone and then hone from that point. That's why the earlier Microtechs were like death sharp. I mean, and they were what was considered to be the polished edges. So to get a polished edge at that point, I would use a coarse belt, stone, and then go to my hone, which you can't do that effectively on a production basis. But now I'm going to go ahead and hone the burr off for its final operation. Okay. At this point, you know, the edge is refined, the burr has been relieved, and it's considered to be what I consider to be hair popping sharp. So, I mean, that's as good as it gets right there. So you see, I mean, we assemble all our OTFs or folders or fixed blades are done with, of course, what we consider to be a dull edge. Unless they're serrated prior, the serration would be ground on, honed, and then it would be sharpened after the fact. But, you know, like I said before, we're very, very careful on how we put the geometries on our bevels to get an optimum grind for this particular blade. But it starts out as a, you know, virgin edge here, and we put them on for the first time, and these blades just come alive.
All right, so that was an awesome demonstration of how those TEs are done, but now we get a little more difficult, or difficulty level increases when you do a double edge.
That is correct. You know, when you're looking at having to run symmetry on 4 different edge bevels, including a tip and a grind, it could be a little bit more challenging, because if you're a little heavy-handed on one side, what happens is you'll typically start to force on either side, and then before you know it, you'll start to disfigure the blade. So you definitely got to pay attention. But then again, same thing with our teammates prior to us. If they don't give us a good edge bevel to begin with, then we have some issues. But sometimes you'll get small anomalies in the edge in manufacturing. You have to pay note to that. That's why I had mentioned earlier, you know, there are some companies that could successfully do these either with robotic arms or doing it in machines. The unfortunate thing is that the human element that they don't get is if there's small anomalies in a double edge, I can correct it with line of sight.
Gotcha.
So if there's a slight, you know, bevel that's slightly off, I can correct it on the wheel. So our associates take great pride in doing the double edges. Of course, the smaller the blade, the more difficult it is. I'm going to start out with the 120 grit. Okay. So the 120 grit roughing is complete, and I'm going to move on to the 600 grit. I was going to mention also that a lot of times, you know, on the roughing wheel, it's very, very light pressure on these bevels. Even if I don't produce a burr in certain spots, if I know I'm going to hit it on the secondary grit, I'll finish it from there. But the whole idea is to maintain that shape. The more that you cut, the more you're going to erode the shape away and disfigure the blade. So my objective is to always get the best possible edge, but to also maintain the original geometry of the blade. That's important to us. What I find with the double-edged knives is you're going to find yourself looking at the blade longer than actually being on the wheel itself. So making those little course corrections as you go is vitally important. They do take time, but they're absolutely worth it. I'm going to go ahead and hone this one up.
All right, that was an awesome demonstration, Tony. Thank you for showing that to us. But I do want to ask you a question. There's this big elephant in the room, and that is in all of the warranty information for Microtech knives, as long as I can remember, it says if you sharpen your knife, you'll void your warranty. What is the meaning behind that, and what does that mean?
Basically, at the end of the day, I mean, we have to find some type of level of limit to understand what's acceptable to us. You know, we've had, you know, in our 27 years, we've had it all. We've had people that have, you know, been able to hone their knives effectively. We've had some that haven't. You know, if you get somebody on an old bench grinder and they're just wailing away at that blade, of course, you know, and you expect a brand new blade, if you've ground away your entire edge bevel, send me back a toothpick and expect that to be covered by warranty, that would be unlikely unfair. Even though that Microtech will make a way to either replace the knife, get you in a brand new knife, or come up with a reasonable way to get you back at it. Because you have to remember, I mean, it's a tool. At the end of the day, when you're sharpening, you're eroding away your cutting edge, and it's going to continuously go away. When properly sharpened, you remove the minimal amount of material. You know, it could give you a lifetime of service depending on how you're using the knife too. Yeah. If you're a hard user every day, depending on the type of materials, you'll require more, you know, more intervals of sharpening. And that's another thing. You know, a lot of people say, hey, I want steel, or I want a knife that's easy to sharpen, but it lasts an edge longer. It's kind of an oxymoron, because if you want wear resistance, which is the cutting matrix of the edge, then of course it's going to be more difficult to sharpen. Like I said, if you sharpen your knives and you want to get it, you know, the factory edge put back on it, you know, using a stone, using a Lansky, using different types of sharpeners, you know, outside of getting on like a grinding wheel or getting on a belt here and making some mistakes, you could burn the temper out of it very easy on a grinding wheel. You know, this process here, as you can see, there's no sparks flying, the blade is not getting hot, and you know, we can control the geometry. We're not going to penalize our customers for attempting to sharpen their knife. It could be very tricky, but there's a lot of great tutorials on how to do this with simple sharpeners that you could buy yourself. You know, these blades, we could replace them, but at the end of the day, let's take a look at yours.
So I've been carrying this knife for 21 years. You guys know that. And Tony, I know you've personally sharpened this knife at least 30 times or so. So after 21 years, you can see that I am starting to lose some of that blade, but it's been professionally sharpened each and every time. If we were to put this on a grinding wheel, after 21 years, it'd probably be half the blade left.
That's correct. That's correct. And it all depends on how much you need to take. That's why I say before, you know, if you are crafty on a set of belts, just look, you know, don't get heavy-handed. It's a very, very finite touch. Let the abrasives do the work. Yeah. And if you could just see, just by visual, by seeing that burr come together, you know, you could understand that you're only taking a minimal amount when you're doing this. But,
I know a lot of people are going to ask angles. Can you explain a little bit about, we don't want to get crazy with it, but for example, like on this Tanto and on this Hera, approximately what angle were you using and why? And I know a lot of that has to do with blade thickness.
Blade thickness is a big factor to me. You know, of course, you know, to understand, you know, what kind of angle I'm using. I know that they did one trick for me one year. But you have to remember, I've been doing this for 27 years, and a lot of the good guys that do it, you know, what's going to create the sharpest part of the edge is being consistent on your angle. So no matter what your angle is, it could vary, but it can't vary between the belts, can't vary in between your honing. So let's say if you're sharpening on a stone, the minute you change that angle geometry or float that geometry, that's what dulls the edge. So consistent in angle is more important than the actual angle itself. They've run these on comparators, the ones that I do. Let's say if I were to do 100 SOCOM Elites, I am exactly within 1/4 of a degree by me doing this by hand, and that is an absolute fact.
But that's experience.
That's experience. You know, so yeah, could my angle be off? But once I get in my mindset, like let's say on these double edges, it could vary slightly in the angle, but it will be consistent across the board. How we train our associates here is you can see that the setups are slightly tweaked differently. We show them and teach them because it's a muscle memory in height. Yes, I could walk up to any grinder, lean over and do it, but most folks can't. You know, you're sharpening on a cylindrical wheel, so changing your height would change your angle. So we allow these guys to situate their grinders in a way that's comfortable to get them into the muscle memory to be able to maintain their angle properly. So that's key if you're doing it by hand. You know, same thing on a stone, maintaining angle. A lot of the newer sharpeners that you see that have the honers and stuff where you go like this, I can't remember the name, or a Lansky, actually adjust your angle so that you can make very little mistakes in changing that. So that's extremely important. Walking up to a grind wheel, you know, you're on your own at that point. Yeah. But, you know, the biggest thing is just consistency on the angle. A lot of people say, hey, between 15 and 19 degrees, 20 degrees is optimum. Yeah. A lot of these pre-positioned sharpeners will have those built in. You know, get in a little Sharpie on your edge if you're using something like that, and just touching it with a Sharpie and then going ahead and giving it a little hone with something fine will allow you to find the optimum angle off your Microtech or any other brand out there consistently for resharpening. Yeah, so it's a good way to do it. Just get a Sharpie and go along the cutting edge. You can't hurt the knife, but it'll show you as you're abrading that away if you're hitting high or hitting low or you want to adjust your angle. It's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Now, I remember it wasn't that long ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago. I mean, you'd be on these wheels sharpening yourself till, I mean, 8, 10 hours at a time. So you're talking about years and years, and it would probably be hundreds of thousands of hours of experience.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you know, unfortunately, you know, when I first got started, I was the, you know, guy who built the knives, you know, got in there. It was just my wife at the time to be. I mean, we started in our apartment. So yes, I had to hone all the knives. And just up until about maybe 7 years ago, when my son Tony started helping me on the line. And by the way, Tony's as good as I am for sure. But he learned, you know, he learned underneath me for the longest time. And each of the associates that we have now have either come from a trade where they sharpen and then, you know, refine these techniques. So. But yeah, I mean, sitting on a bench for as long as it was starting to get really tricky as the quantities got bigger to help maintain a company and also work from behind a grinding wheel. Even though I still do it and they can do it, we are blessed to know that we have some great people working with us.
Yeah, now you wanted to mention something about this TE that you actually sharpened here.
Yes.
It was actually cool. He just opened it up, and
yeah.
This is, I haven't actually played with a lot of these models. But
yeah, so we're going to unwrap this one here, and it's kind of neat. So this is a Jade Top Ultratech, one of the signature series. It's a serial number 35 that I sharpened today. I was just going to let you folks know that we'll do some type of, you know, I'd like to offer that back to our subscribers and our fans, and just, we're going to give this knife away. I don't know how we're going to do it. Ray and I will put something together, but it is serial number 35.
You're going to sign it?
I am going to hand sign this box, and we're going to do it in a giveaway.
All right, Tony, thanks for that informative video. That was awesome to be able to see that firsthand. But this is that Jade Ultratech TE, serial number 35. So what I think you're going to do is you're going to actually sign this.
I'm going to sign this piece, number 35. 21. All right.
All right, and what we're going to do, folks, is if you comment and you're a subscriber below, now this will give you a week or two, because what we're going to do is we're going to pick a comment from below. You have to be subscribed to the channel, and we'll give it away on our next video release at Microtech Knives. I think it's an awesome gesture. Thank you for doing that, Tony. Thanks for spending the time out of your day, and we hope to see you soon. Guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'd like to see this channel grow. Have a great week.
Thank you.